In this video, I want to talk about everyday wellness, and I want to talk about particularly personalizing wellness and two ways of approaching personalizing wellness, but two ways of doing so that you probably want to draw from both rather than just one, but in which starting with one to begin with can be very, very valuable. Though I recommend ultimately going the double route and combining a bit of both, always as you're pursuing wellness, because they really help to help us learn and grow as individuals as we engage in them. And then that's going to be focused on our individual preferences as well as universals with regards to wellness. And personalizing wellness really requires us to establish both, because if we focus more on our preferences, there's a tendency to move towards hedonism and to even abandon some wellness practices altogether and engage in sort of these self-deceptive wellness practices that in the moment are very pleasurable and enjoyable, but in the long run, and even sometimes within that moment, we can recognize them as sort of like a band-aid solution and not really that effective or meaningful. While as on the other hand, if we focus too much on another approach to personalizing wellness that is also very, very valuable, which is more universal and which applies across individuals, and neglect our preference, this can also come to the detriment of sustaining wellness practices by taking away from what is meaningful and what matters to the self, but also what we find enjoyable and what we do derive positive well-being and which impacts our optimizing of our own wellness through this diminished satisfaction and even fostering unpleasantness or negative experiences with regards to the self across various perceptions, motivations, emotions, feelings, actions, and behaviors, and even a sense of potential meaninglessness or valuelessness, insignificance, and that can be frustrating. So it's really important to develop a healthy integration of both the universal aspects and our preferences, because the universal aspects generally tend to tap into something pretty deep into the nature of self and being, and what it means to actually live well and be well, and is often directly related to various aspects of the mind, body, or environment that have more of this objective basis to it. And so the universal can be very informative and important for establishing a routine and a structure to well-being, while preference ultimately can help us to inform us in regards to what wellness practices work, and is also the most direct way of establishing whether or not a wellness is effective for you or not, through these qualities of experience, through the direct feedback that we get from our perceptions. And preferences ultimately also help us to understand the self and develop greater self-knowledge and self-awareness in relation to our own well-being and what we're doing, and to get that insight and develop this cognizance and presence of mind, which is essential for well-being. So preference and the universals really work hand in hand, and having a better understanding of our preferences alongside cultivating greater self-awareness helps us to really reinforce the universals and integrate them more effectively, and also allow us to stretch the self and engage more with the situated self, in which we might not necessarily have our preferences direct at hand, but having an awareness of our preference can help us to appreciate and accommodate for the universals more through forming these relations between our preferences and what we might not prefer that much, and what we don't know yet if we have a preference for or not, as well as how that ultimately impacts our well-being. And preferences help us to navigate the world in various ways and guide us forward, while if we were to always act within our preferences, we would have a very biased map, and it would be more closed in regards to the world and how our perceptions, motivations, actions, and behaviors directly impact our well-being, while recognizing universal aspects that are important that aren't necessarily within our preference allows us to stretch that out and integrate more knowledge and information that we might not otherwise have, even on things that we do not prefer or we dislike. They can be highly informative for guiding our future development and wellness and promoting greater well-being, but also ultimately sustaining our wellness and well-being by developing a more holistic system that allows us to really address the times in which we are experiencing unpleasantness in regards to our own wellness and development, and of course in regards to promoting and optimizing our own well-being. Developing that cognizance of what is unpleasant and what's pleasant can allow us to move towards more of these pleasant experiences and away from the unpleasant, or at least regulate the frequency of the unpleasant in relation to optimizing well-being and making us more resilient in the process and really hardy throughout the whole navigation of the system towards optimizing our well-being in a positive direction through developing a healthy balance of the universals and our preferences that are direct components of personalizing wellness. So when it comes to personalizing wellness, we might want to start thinking about what we like about our wellness routines and the various wellness activities that we engage in, and come to a deeper understanding of our personal preferences, but then also assess the universals and what's most important to us as individuals, and what the trajectory that we want to go and what we have to do in order to get there, based off a set of universals that are more objective, even though we might not like that, or in which we have experiences in which, say, I think a lot of people tend to struggle with the two major ones is diet and exercise. And so if you've struggled with, say, working out, like especially if it's what you're doing is weightlifting, and you tend to be lifting heavy weights, but you want to gain muscle, so you have to lift heavy weights. Just understanding how to do that more effectively based off what's tried and true, and doing some research, having that universal knowledge can be very important for informing your preferences. And as you engage in that, you start to stretch yourself in ways in which you can find weightlifting exercises that you might actually enjoy and like to do in the future, and can develop your own ways of motivating yourself even around or surrounding that unpleasant activity of weightlifting by making it more engaging. And maybe you enjoy research and learning about this, or as you're thinking about how you're going to go weightlifting the next time, because you've learned all this new stuff about maybe how to set up your reps, taking a break, maybe even stretching in between or before and after. You're now more motivated to tackle the enterprise of physical exercise because you have these information resources now at your disposal that you can use to broaden your wellness repertoire and really improve yourself and optimize yourself in that direction. But that's going to be more effective, especially if you're combining some aspects of the universal with your personal preferences, and really make it more about you as an individual and your own personal well-being, rather than focus way too much on the universals, as well as also to avoid hedonism and focusing on way too much on your preferences and not looking at all into the universals, because those universals are very valuable in even promoting our own preferences and growing them, and also developing greater insight and self-understanding through being able to really integrate the two. So that's a bit for now in regards to that, and that's all I wanted to say in regards to that and personalizing our wellness. I'll be talking about this topic more in subsequent videos, but for right now, I'm just going to keep it there. So I hope you enjoy.